Thank you last night for the follow there. Thank you last night for the follow there. Are you hearing an echo on my end, since I can hear, or on the stream? Are you hearing an echo on my end, since I can hear, or on the stream? Okay, hopefully I fixed it then. That's good to know that it was not picking up on both sides. And thank you for joining me. We're gonna wait about 3 more minutes for people to come in, and then we'll get started for sure. Yeah, while this is going, we're going to let this intro cinematic play, which gives us some nice background to the whole story. And thank you, Nash890, for the follow. I appreciate that a lot. Okay, we just had a whole bunch of people hop in, so once this intro cinematic finishes playing, telling a detail of how the origins of the holy weapons of the game and of the back conflict, then we're going to get started with Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War. Yep. Oh gosh. I would kill for Sigurd or Seliph in Smash, even though that makes no sense. Anyway, welcome everyone. This is Ludo History. My name is Adam. I am a historian by training with degrees in both specifically Scandinavian history and mythology and the wider Middle Ages. Today we are playing Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War. This is the 4th Fire Emblem game in the series. It was released for the SNES in, I believe it's 1993? 96, okay? And this game has a lot in common with medieval, or specifically non-Christian medieval epic. We're going to go through it, but you're going to see a ton of references. Thank you, Missing Link, for the follow. So yeah, as we get started, my goal is to get through the prologue chapter to this game, and if we have time, we'll start into chapter 1. So here we have the beginning of things. The first name that kind of shows up here is Loptir. The downfall of the Loptir Empire. 7 Crusaders unite to start a powerful new state, others form 5 independent kingdoms. So, 100 years before the events of the game, a dark empire led by a god, or actually a dragon, named Loftyr appeared and kind of screwed everything over. Loftyr is actually our first Norse reference. Loftyr is a mysterious god in the actual corpus. He appears in Völuspá alongside Odin and Heinir as one of the creators of Leaf and Leaf Thrasir from Driftwood. This game assumes, as scholars in the 90s did, that Loftyr is another name for Loki. And so, this actually is reinforced by several things in the game with the dark magic. We won't see any dark magic users until Chapter 1, but they have names like Fenrir and Jörmungandr, so very much leaning into Loftyr as Loki as a devil figure. So there's already a Norse reference. As we're going through here, we can see on this map there's a whole bunch more. The whole continent here is called Yggdrasil, which we actually checked. It's a corruption, or an alteration in the Japanese of the word for Yggdrasil, the world tree of Norse mythology. And in this kingdom here called Granvale, we can see that there's already 4-ish, possibly 5 Norse references. Belhalla is hidden behind Kurth's face here, but that is Valhalla. Then we have Edda, which is, as the name suggests, is the frozen poetic mythological Eddas. Chalfi is a corruption of the Norse name Thjalfi, retainer to Thor, and Ljungberg here is a corruption of Yngvi, a name for Freyr. Frigga might be Frigg or Freya, but it's not clear, and Duzel and Velfamir sound like Norse names, but I've not been able to confirm them as a reference to anything in particular. Anyway, we're getting our introductions to a whole bunch of characters here that we will not see for a very long time. Well, we're going to see Arvis. Arvis is one of our main characters in this narrative, though, well, we'll get to him. Also, fair warning, I will be spoiling. I'll try and avoid spoiling anything in the second half of this game, but there will be spoilers through most of the first half. I'll try and keep them limited, and I'm not going to spoil any of the too big twists, but inevitably talking about the myths and talking about how they're adapting myth requires that I discuss the full character arcs of some of these figures, and so there will be spoilers. And yeah, in the narrative here, after introducing us to the issues of Granvale politics, the neighboring country of Isaac, which used to be allied with Granvale, decided to attack Darkna in the Yi Desert. So, everyone's going to war, and this is going to go badly. Lord Byron here, his name is actually probably a reference to the poet Lord Byron, who was the sixth Lord Byron, but this seems to just be a reference to that, just stealing the name because it can. I've not seen any deeper reason for that particular name. Certainly, Byron is far more prudish than the historical Lord Byron poet, womanizer, drug addict extraordinaire. And we have these other countries, Verdane and Augustria. Augustria is a Latin reference, obviously Augustus, for the name of the emperor, or honestly the title of the emperor. Verdane is just green place. It's from the Latin word verde, or Spanish verde, and so it's just green. Which makes sense, because this whole area is forests. But they're allied with us, nothing will possibly go wrong, except for the thing that immediately goes wrong. As if from nowhere, a vast horde from Verdane, led by Prince Gandalf, which, that is what it sounds like, it is Gandalfur, crosses the Grand Vale border and lays siege to Youngby Castle. In Lord Ring's absence, his daughter, Lady Ideen, is Youngby's only guardian. Lord Byron has entrusted the defense of Grand Vale in his absence to his son, Sigurd, who remains at Chelfie Castle with a mere handful of soldiers. Friend of Ideen since childhood, Sigurd is horrified to hear of the Youngby siege, and even with so few soldiers, is determined to protect Ideen and his fatherland from the savage Verdanite hordes. So, as we're going through this, you can see already there's this very clear Grand Vale bias. Isaac was described as barbarian and created a huge massacre. Verdane has these violent hordes. So there is very much this exoticism going on, and this Grand Vale centrism going on that is quite problematic, given that there's nothing inherently worse in Isaac or in Verdane than in Grand Vale. In fact, in many ways, the situation is probably better in those places. So this is a weird narrative bias that shows up and kind of is done, I think, to create our sympathies and make us think we are doing the right thing. Certainly, every character in this is convinced through the entire time that they are doing the right thing. So, coming up here, we have our next set of mythological references. We have here the where is it? There it is. We have here these two characters, Midir and Ideen. Midir and Ideen are a reference to a couple in Irish mythology. Midir is just Midir, and Ideen is a romanization of Etain. And this is from... where is it? The Tokmark Etain, The Wooing of Etain, which is a series of 3 Irish stories. Midir ends up marrying Ideen after falling in love with her, and going and meeting the young Etain Ekred, the daughter of Aelil of Ulster. Also, Angus, son of the Dagda, who Dagda is actually a reference to FE5, or in FE5, but an Irish hero, Angus, ends up actually getting a fight with Midir, puts out his eye, and then his eye gets restored and he marries Ideen, but Midir was actually already married. So, in revenge, his first wife ends up turning Ideen into a gigantic fly. Yep. The pool... So, the first wife, Fumnach, touches her with a rod of scarlet quickentry and turns her into a pool of water. The pool becomes a worm that turns into a purple fly as big as a man's head, with eyes like precious stones and a fragrance that would turn away hunger and thirst. Fumnach vows to further injure Etain and stirs up a wind that blows her around Ireland for 7 years until she arrives at Brunabun to Angus, who welcomes her. He covers her in a purple cloak, but Fumnach blasts her into the air until she lands on a roof in Ulster and falls into a cup in front of the wife of the warrior Etar, and the woman swallows the fly. This fly that is the size of a head gets swallowed by falling into a cup. I don't know. As a result, Etar has a daughter who's also named Etain, and it's said that there's a space of 1,012 years between the first conception of Etain by Aelil and this birth by Etar. Etain grows up to be a beautiful woman, and Midir ends up finding her again. Yeah, so that's fucking wild, and it just keeps going. This Etain ends up getting married to Eked Aram, the King of Terra and High King of Ireland. And then, one of his companions, Aelil, falls desperately in love with Etain, and ends up nearly dying because of lovesickness. And Etain ends up having to care for Aelil, and he gets better magically, and is like, hey, we should meet and bang. And Etain goes, yeah, that seems fair. And so they try to meet 3 times, but Midir, intervening, puts Aelil to sleep all 3 times. So she does nothing dishonorable while still getting farther away from Eched. And the third tale has Midir and Eched actually compete for Etain's marriage. And they do that by playing chess, which is a super honorable thing in Irish mythology. Midir completely sandbags for the first 2 matches, and ends up doing pretty great great rewards to Eched for it. But Midir is actually playing 5-dimensional chess on this 2-dimensional chessboard, and on the 3rd match says, okay, but the wager is that if I win this time, then I get to kiss your wife. Eched's like, yeah, sure, fine, I'm gonna beat you, and gets absolutely trashed at the chess game. And so Midir goes and hugs Etain, and then they both turn into swans and fly away, and so are together again. It ends by Eched going to Midir and trying to find him, and then accidentally choosing his own daughter, who looks exactly like Etain, as the real Etain, and taking her as wife, which is horribly incestuous, and yeah, it ends up very bad. Let's see. Yeah, they ends up banishing his daughter, wife, and trying to get his granddaughter killed. Irish mythology is even more fucked up than Norse mythology, which is saying something. So yeah, that's a big mythological reference. The other big one here, well, actually there's 2 more coming up. The first one here is our main Lord Sigurd, our blue-haired hero. I mean, Welsh and Irish are very closely related. We're going to see some comparisons here, and obviously, like, Manan and MacLear in Irish is incredibly important in both Irish, Welsh, and the Isle of Man is named after him. So it's a very closely related mythology, but yeah, it's wild. Yeah, the other name here, Sigurd, is obviously the greatest hero of Norse mythology, Sigurd the Fafnismani, Sigurd the killer of the dragon Fafnir. So we'll talk about him in a little bit, once we get into the game here and see just how busted Sigurd is. Additionally, though, we actually have another triple whammy of references, because Shozo Kaga made almost every single name a reference to something. We have here Noish, Alec, and Arden with the horrifying face here. Arden is unfortunately an armor knight, which means he's completely useless in this game, but Alec and Noish are cavaliers. Alec and Noish Noish specifically, are very closely related to another character we'll meet in Chapter 1, Deirdre. In this game, Deirdre is going to be Sigurd's wife, but in the heroic cycle, in the Ulster cycle, Deirdre and Noish are actually lovers. Oh god, these games were atrocious to armored units. Archers, I mean, Midir's pretty useless, but he has pursuit, so he's not bad. But foot units in FE4, just bad time for everyone. But yeah, Noish, and then his brothers are Ainul and Arden. I wish Alec here was named Anal to flesh out that group, but they're actually the lovers. Noish is Deirdre's lover, and Ardan and Aina are his brothers. All of them end up getting killed in a very tragic story that I will tell when we get to Deirdre. In the meantime, though, let's look at how absolutely busted Sigurd is. Sigurd is our main lord for the first half of Fire Emblem 4, and as you can see, his stats are just huge. He has Pursuit, which means as long as his attack speed is higher than the enemy's attack speed, he will attack twice in a round of combat. Additionally, with S proficiency in swords, he can use any sword in the game, and with swords having absolutely no weight whatsoever, he's going to be doubling almost anything. He can very easily solo this game. Additionally, he has, you can see here, Major Baldur Holyblood. These are the lines of the 12 Crusaders. These names are, except for 2 of them, or actually 3 of them, actually all also mythological references. We will go through them in a moment. I actually have them all written down as to what the Crusaders all, where they come from, what the weapons are, and what we're doing. So we'll start with just the Baldur one. We can introduce the other ones as we meet characters with those Holy Bloods. Baldur is the Crusade, is obviously a reference to the Norse god Baldur, god of light and usually all good things. This is mostly just stealing the name, as is the name of his weapon. Currently Lord Byron has the weapon, wielded by the Crusader Baldur, but that is the divine Tyrfing. Tyrfing is a cursed sword from Hervarar saga that is fated that whenever it's drawn, it has to kill someone before it can be sheathed again. And it leads to a lot of family deaths, because in one case near the end of the saga, the wielder of the Tyrfing draws it, and therefore has no choice but to murder his 2 sons, because the sword compels him to. Oddly, there's actually a sword in the list of weapons here that would be a better fit for Sigurd. You can see next to it there's Otto with another sword there. That's Balmung. Balmung is the name of Siegfried's sword from the Nibelungenlied, and that seems to me like it would be a better case. So this seems to be a case where there's just some exoticism going on. They're taking the names without so much regard for what they actually refer to and what would be appropriate. Anyway, let's take a look at our other guys here. Noish has critical and a cost, which means sometimes if his attack speed is, or based on his attack speed, he can sometimes initiate a full second round of combat. And critical means that he's one of the few characters that can innately get a critical hit for triple damage. No. Wait, this game does criticals differently, sorry. Criticals are even more busted in this game. Criticals in this game double the attack stat of your weapon. So you can see Noish has 21 attack. If he crits, that's 42, which is basically a guaranteed kill. Alec here also has Pursuit and Nihil, which means he cannot get crit, but he's otherwise not super great. He doesn't have a whole lot. And then we have Arden here. Arden is strong and tough, and has 5 movement in a map this big. This is the smallest map in the game. Arden is going to really struggle to be useful, but we're going to try anyway. Because we don't actually need to protect this castle as long as we're killing everything between us and it. So here we go. We're attacking this Verdunite Barbarian with an Iron Axe. Hopefully, yep, Alec continues to be bad at dodging, so that sucks. In my practice run, Alec got hit by literally everything and died very quickly. Oh yeah, the maps in 2 are big and empty, but luckily actually in this game it's a little bit better. because this game basically plays in segments. So the first map is really just to here. And so we're progressing castle to castle to try and take on this whole area. And so a whole bunch of more enemies will spawn here once we take this castle. And so it all kind of works in nice, happy relationship. Oh yeah, here's our bad news, Gandalf. You can see he's a level 20 second class unit. His stats are high, but he's actually not that much scarier than Sigurd, who's level 5. So yeah, he's kind of scary, but mostly just way outclasses poor Midir here. And yeah, let's get going. Sigurd's... What I'm going to do is have Arden go try and rescue this village, while Noish and Alec push forward and try and clear out this area. Sigurd's going to solo almost all of these guys, because he can do it. He is a strong boy. Yeah, also, we can see none of these guys have any sort of Holy Blood. In this game, Holy Blood dramatically improves your growth rates, and so Sigurd actually has like 130% hit point growths, so every time he gets to 100 experience, he will gain hit points, and he might gain 2 hit points in a single level. It do be Fire Emblem time. This is one of my favorite Fire Emblem games, and this game, well, I think I've already demonstrated that there's a lot of references to Norse and Irish mythology in here. My main point, as we're kind of going through, is kind of asking the question and then definitively answering it. Did Kaga intend all of these, or did he just think the names sounded cool? And there's definitely some of both going on, but for the most part, it's my opinion that he very much intended it, and he's constructing a medieval epic that you can actually play through, and does it incredibly successfully. While this game is not a well-balanced game, it does what it's trying to do extremely well, and it ends up being really quite impressive for it. So yeah, Midir just died. Gandalf just murdered him. And so, Aideen is getting kidnapped. This guy does kind of show off a good case of what else is going on. These names are not thematically or geographically consistent, because DiMaggio is about as Italian of a name as you could get, or stereotypically Italian thug, I should say. So there's no real consistency between locations and names, and that's why I say there's some part of this is just exoticism. There's very much a sense that some of this is just because. The names sound cool, and they're vaguely appropriate, and so he just puts in the names, and there may be references to things, and they may just be stereotypical names for thugs and barbarians, or they may be something else. Tell us something about the character, tell us something about the world. There's a lot going on with these names, which is pretty cool. And this guy's a creep, so I have no complaints about absolutely murdering him. Yikes. So yeah, Gandalf here is one of the 3 sons of the King of Verdane, alongside Jamka and Kimbaith. Jamka is actually a Mongolian name, and Kimbaith is an Irish name. So we have Irish, Mongolian, and Norse all in the same family. So yeah, that's cool. And yeah, now, I just paused the game. Enemy phase. They're just kind of gonna run up forward. Oops, I have not changed my options yet. Let's make this game actually, like, watchable. And there's Sigurd things. Sigurd one-rounds basically every enemy he gets, and since he's only level 5, even though he's technically in a promoted class, he gains experience very quickly, which is great news. Alec, please! Dodge anything. Okay, and we've got more people coming in here. They're going to raid the villages. As you can see, villages in this game actually take longer than 1 turn to burn. Heck yes. And so we actually have 10 turns to help out these villages. We just lose, the longer it takes, we lose more gold. That's fair, Leander. Okay, and we have 2 new units here, Azel and Lex. Azel is the younger son of Arvis, or the younger brother of Arvis, who we met earlier. So he's from House Velthomer. And Lex is the son of Longabalt, who's the Count of Dozel. So he's an Axe Knight, Azel's a mage. And yeah, apparently, Chelfie is the only soldiers left in the entire western half of Granvale, which is no good, because my guys are okay. Sigurd's really a good, but everyone else is kind of not. Lex suffers because he's stuck in the worst class of the game, or the worst weapon type in the game. He's got axes, which is appropriate for his family. His father, Longabalt, uses the Hellswave, which is a divine axe. But yeah, he's fine. His stats aren't terrible, but he actually has -3 attack speed, which means he's not necessarily going to be doing a lot. But he always attacks first, and he gets double XP from battles. So he's going to level up fast, he's going to get to promotion very quickly. Let's see, does he have... he does have Minor Near Holy Blood. So Near is a made-up word as far as I can find. I've checked, I couldn't find any reference that Near actually was referring to, but this boosts his growth as well, and alongside Paragon means he's actually going to be pretty good. It also improves his axe strength, so he can use any axe in the game, especially the Brave Axe. Azel here, meanwhile, has Minor Vala Holy Blood. Vala, you can't tell it from this translation, but the Japanese and the old translation patch actually call it Fjalar, which is the actual translation according to official localizations and in like Fire Emblem Heroes and such. So Fjalar is one of the 2 dwarfs that murdered Kvasir to brew the mead of poetry. So this is actually another Norse reference. As far as I can tell, they didn't actually have a connection to fire. Fjalar was not burned to death when the Jötnar claimed the mead of poetry from him and his brother, but that's the connection that they chose to make here. Let's see. Fjalar is the holy weapon is called Valflame, which is I think why they translated to Vala, but that's also a made-up word. It likely borrows the Norse word for slain people, Valir. So it would be the fire of the fallen or something like that, which is a sensible and appropriate translation. Arvis is the wielder of the Valflame. We'll see him in this chapter. It's a terrifying weapon. The Hellswave is the axe for Dozel, and is largely pretty meh, because it's an axe in this game. There's nothing good that comes of that. Cool. Azel did just won that for me very quickly. I like that. Also, let's go into our options. Animations on, terrain on, text speed. Nope. Text speed all the way up, enemy speed up. Audio settings are fine. Autosave on to file 1. Auto cursor is on. Cool. So yeah, those are our new units. They're pretty fine. And yeah, we're about to get even more units next turn to kind of fill out the chapter. So that's gonna go well for us because it's going to get us a much needed healer, given that Alec is nearly dead. In this game, there are no vulneraries or anything like that. You heal at churches or via healers, and that's it. Okay. So, something else I wanted to talk about is that obviously there's a lot of pre-Christian mythological references, and often drawing on an epic tradition like Sigurd, like Etain and Noish, all falling into these heroic cycles, and these heroic stories. Oh yeah, I didn't finish talking about these guys. Azel's name appears to be Hebrew in origin and just means noble one, while Lex is a shortening of Alexander. Alec is also a shortening of Alexander, but I want that to not actually be a reference to Alexander the Pretty, okay? And actually fit into that pattern the other Chalfie Knights fall into. But yeah, obviously, while all of this is in a very heroic set of references, mechanically, there's this huge focus in this game on cavalry and on knighthood. Basically, if you aren't on a horse, you're not a very good unit. It sucks because cavalry is, in most games, is already pretty oppressive, but in this game, it's really oppressive. Because in this game, horses have super canto, so you can move and then attack and then continue moving and then change items. And it's fine. Which is completely nuts. Okay, Lex has better hit rates than I thought he'd have. Good job, Lex. And yeah, you see they just kind of slowly keep burning. We'll get all of those in with plenty of time. I'm actually going to give that to Arden. He doesn't need a whole lot of money, but he does need a little bit. So yeah, cavalry is oppressive, so let's have 3 more cavalry units. This here are Quinn and Ethlin. Ethlin is Sigurd's brother. Quinn is one of Sigurd's best friends. They went to university together. Which is such an anime trope. But it's fine. Then Quinn is from the county of Leinster in a different country, actually, not even in Granvale. He's from the Leicester or the Munster Alliance in Thracia. So Thracia is divided into, well, 5 districts, which, like Ireland is, or kind of. Mythologically, Ireland was divided into 5 districts. There are actually only 4 districts today, or in any of the sources. There's just mention of a 5th district, but the 4 districts are Munster, Ulster, Leinster, and Connaught. which are the 4 main cities in the Lesser Alliance, or whatever name we want to use for North Thracia. South Thracia is a draconian, quite literally, because all the Wyvern Riders are there, mountainous state that all kinda sucks. So, we have 3 more guys here. We have Quan, who's another promoted unit, level 4. He can only use lances, which sucks in this chapter, but with Adept has pretty okay speed, though obviously the lances weigh him down a lot. He has -2 speed. Luckily, the axe users mostly have more speed than he does, so he'll still sometimes adapt. Which is just good when it happens, not a huge deal otherwise. Holy Blood-wise, he has Major Nova Holy Blood, but this is another case where the translation screws it up, because the Japanese name is identical to the word for translation of Njören. Njören is a goddess that appears in Snorri Sturluson's Skaldskaparmál in the list of the female deities or Ausynjur. And past that, nothing else is known about her. So this is just a name that's taken. In the game, Njören was the crusader who received the Gebolg. The Gebolg is a famous lance in Irish mythology. It's the Lance of Cuchulainn, given to him by Scafach. And it is a pretty horrifying weapon with a really tragic history. In the mythology, Cuchulainn ends up using it to kill his foster brother and dear friend Ferdiad, and his son Carnla. In this game, it reflects that tragic history, and that the wielder of the Gebolg is not able or will not die peacefully. Hey, Velith. They tell you this 2 chapters ahead. Evelyn will say that the Gebolg is cursed when she gives it to Kuan in chapter 3. So it warns you that these guys are not going to have a very happy ending long beforehand. And even that's something this game does a lot. Like the intro to this prologue said, no one could predict then what calamities would follow. This game, I'll warn everyone, it does not have a happy most of it. But anyway, we have here Ethlyn, who is Sigurd's sister and our first healer of the game. She can use pretty much any sword in the game, including she'll get the light brand soon, and she can use some staves. Luckily, most staves don't really take a whole lot of staff rank to use, so she can heal. She also has a slim sword here. She'll do occasional chip damage, but for the most part, she's not super duper important, though she can crit, which is nice. She has minor Baldur Holy Blood, which means she can't use the holy weapon, the Tyrfing, and she gets less bonuses, but she still is pretty good. Finn is another Lance Knight. He has the best availability in the game. With Pursuit and Miracle, he's actually really good. If we can get him going, he's going to be one of the best units in this game, and it's the only unit that appears in both the first half and the second half of the game that you can actually play as, which is awesome. He does not have any Holy Blood, but his growth rates are actually still pretty good. So I like him. I'm going to use him a little bit, but I'm not going to worry too much about trying to get him really good before we get to before we get into much later in the game. So all these guys are going to come down to help reinforce Sigurd. Not that he needs it, but they have conversations with him, so we're going to pretend. Alright, in the meanwhile, we're going to take on this village. We believe in him. He's a good boy. Wow. 25% hit rate, still got hit. Fire Emblem RNG bug. This is actually fine, because this guy is not actually going to... Even if he hits, he's actually not going to attack. On his turn, he'll try to burn down the village more. So he'll burn down the village one more time, which means we'll get 3,500 gold from this village. But that's okay. Noisha's gonna keep going, and he crit. Look at how much damage he does. Criticals in this game are incredibly busted, but there's only two ways to actually get a crit. You can either have the skill critical, or you can be using a weapon with 50 or more kills attached to it. I'll show that off right now. You can see there's a star there next to the weapon rank. Star 2 means that this fire tome has killed 2 people. Once this fire tome has killed 50 people, every kill after that gives it 1% critical. So if we can get something with a 100 kills on it, which is the last one the game keeps track of, then it gets 50 crit, which is completely nuts. Meanwhile, Lex is just gonna kind of keep trying. Not really in a scary situation here, but we'll drop him on the church anyway to heal up. You can already see such a huge difference. I've moved Arden almost all of his move every turn. He's gotten from here to here. You moved Noish about as far as he can every turn, and he's way out here. So, cavalry units are incredibly good in this game. This is actually something I kind of like. It's bad for the game balance, but what it's really good for is demonstrating one of the ways in which Epic in the Middle Ages was filtered through the culture it was part of. Okay, Sigurd just popped off with a huge level, getting 5 stat ups there. So, congratulations, he's even more busted now. One of the big themes in this game is chivalry, and the limits of how far should loyalty go, and how far should chivalric duty go, and when does that go from being a good thing to a bad thing. So, obviously, with the high status in the Middle Ages afforded to knighthood, especially in Romance and in medieval epic, more so than in the historical period, or in the historical Middle Ages necessarily. In epic and in Romance, there's this huge focus and huge concern as to the extent to which you could actually... Lex has advantage, it's good. He gets so much experience for a kill here. But with this exploration of just where these limits are, drawing on a medieval epic tradition that really likes knighthood and Arthuriana. Really, that's kind of one of the good examples, is the Arthurian tradition. Really likes knights, really likes exploring how a good knight should act. So this, by taking these pre-Christian references and putting it into this later Arthurian styling with this focus on knighthood and really on cavalry doing great deeds, it really shows an awareness of a lot of the different influences that go into medieval epic and into medieval fantasy. And that's something that games or I should say that, let's see what these guys all have. That many games that purport to draw on the Middle Ages. Wait, I have Super Kanto. It's fine. We'll use a javelin here. You can see Quan hits like a truck. He is a hugely powerful unit here, and Super Kanto is just incredibly broken. I don't need to worry about Ethlyn. With her Slim Sword, these enemies have almost no hits on her. Still will protect her a little bit, I guess. I don't think that protected her at all. 1, 2, yeah. 2 people can attack her. That still is not really a problem. But yeah. One of the questions that I had while researching this was, of course, to what extent did Kaga intend all of these references? Because there are a lot of them. The answer is that he intended very many of them, and he shows a really coherent understanding of what it means to be making a medieval narrative. For example, in a developer interview talking about a spoiler event that happens in the second half of the game, he refers to it as a kind of gace, is the word he uses, which is an Irish oath of obligation that could both occur between just a king and his lord, or between a fey being and a hero. And in either case, it shows some pretty specific obligations on them, and sometimes can even last beyond death. And he's aware of that tradition, and he explicitly references it in a developer interview, which is extremely cool. What's your attack speed? You have avoid negative 20. Okay, weight of 20, speed of 10. Speed is negative 10. Zell's speed is negative 3. Negative 3 is a bigger number than negative 10, so Zell is going to double for lethal damage. I believe 19 or 17 twice is 34. Yeah. So Zell gets the kill here. The fact that this game keeps track of negatives is actually really cool. I am quite a big fan of that. It's way better than things just capping out at 0. Okay, Azil got a terrible level up, but it's magic. He's a magic user. What more do you need? We've got our team here, going in. Lex is moved. Has Arden moved? Yes. Great. So yeah, Kaga, I think... I'm just so impressed by this game, because of how much this is aware of the traditions it draws on, and actually tries to make these in some way reflect the actual traditions. So again, like with Medea and Nadine, they are one of the strongly implied canon pairings. There's a few that are regarded as within what's possible for the canon. And obviously, there's customizable pairings in this game, obviously. So, ooh, I may have gotten... we may have a reset here. Luckily, Finn now has 10 extra avoid because he's below 10 HP. But I think he... Oh, okay, went for Ethlyn. Phew. That was nearly very scary. So, yeah, that would have been bad. And yeah, Velith, the pixel art in this game is so beautiful. I mean, even Fire Emblem 3, which has way worse pixel art, has really good pixel art. Though I do like this one's pixel art more than I like Thracia 776's. Sigurd just casually trashing a hand axe user. Okay, so we've got a small problem here. Ethlin has to heal Finn. Because otherwise Finn is absolutely going to die. But we'll actually start Finn running away. Because I believe he can actually get out of reach of everyone. And leave the rest of it to Quan. Oh yeah, I didn't mention the even more mythological references. And another good proof of that he's not, Kaga actually read the sources he is taking names from. Because there's a bunch of people in Irish mythology named Quan. However, if you change the letter to instead be C-I-A-N, so Shen, that is the husband of Ethlin, who is the daughter of the Fomorian Baelor. Their son, in the game, their son is Leif. In Irish mythology, their son is Lugh. In either case, a highly renowned prince who really is one of the foundational people for Ireland, just as the Leinster Alliance is just Ireland. And an absolutely busted unit in the mythology. Just like Leif in this game is actually totally busted. It's surprising just how strong he is. Because Leif starts as a prince, which means he promotes to Master Knight, which has the most overkill promotion bonuses in the game. So if we can get Leif going in Gen 2, I do intend to play all through this game eventually. If we can get that far. Yeah, sure. Swords just beat everything in this game. This man is lying. This man is absolutely lying. Swords beat everything in this game. But yeah, Finn gets ability to use every weapon except divine weapons and every magic type in the game when he promotes. Which is so insanely strong. But I'm surprised that it was allowed. Okay, I can go next to the forest and be in range of only one person. Oh yeah, Sigurd does Sigurd things. Arden. Arden's gonna visit the village. Antonio, you would absolutely be prosecuted as a heretic for having knowledge of hell that you weren't supposed to have. Even if it's killing demons, that's not how demons work in medieval understandings. So that would be no good. But two, oh damn it, he can still make it. And that archer can, crap. I'm actually gonna have to load a chapter here because Finn is almost certainly going to die. 27. Okay, so 27, 7 defense. May as well be 6 defense. That's 18. So 11, 12. And another 12. Actually, he may Miracle procs may mean he's okay. We'll find out, but I may have to reload the previous turn. And Dante was not well liked by the Pope, so he wasn't writing for the Pope. The Pope did not approve, so I wouldn't necessarily use Dante as a good example. Oh, cool, he missed. We're fine now. Totally calculated. Cool. And he went for Ethlin anyway. That makes it a lot easier. Ethlin, as you can see, Ethlin's actually pretty good here. Okay, we're gonna focus mostly here on dealing with these villages, because I don't want them to burn down anymore. We are going to save. Yeah. I guess a good example of what I mean in the Middle Ages when I say that we are seeing something that actually occurred in the Middle Ages occurring in this game. When I say that, a good example of that comes from the Old High German poem, Der Nibelungenlied. So, the story of Siegfried and Fafnir, well, not so much Fafnir barely appears in it, but the story of Siegfried and the Nibelungs, or Norse Niflungar, is a really good example of what I mean by mixing pre-Christian and later medieval storytelling into a very, very specific way in order to achieve a very specific end and a very specific type of epic. Because the Nibelungenlied was composed in the Nibelungenlied was composed around the year 1200. This is pretty late in terms of composition. Certainly, we have stories of Sigurður Fatismani going back to the 10th century, at least. So, this is actually quite late. This is risky. No, it's not. Okay. Actually, can Ethlin get this kill? Let's see. Ethlin cannot get this kill. Okay, we're actually going to do something weird. We're going to put them next to each other to attack, and hopefully... Nope, no lava crits. Unlucky. But we got a depth proc. That saves me a lot of stress. Adept procs are super helpful when they happen. They're just unreliable. Yeah, so the Nibelungenlied is written in a very courtly and very obviously courtly milieu. They do very typically high medieval chivalric courtly things like going on tournaments with lances and jousting and all sorts of such things. That was not such a good level, Sigurd. You have better growth rates than that. I believe in you. You can turn out to be... Well, it'll still turn out to be the best unit in the game, but that's not really the point. Yeah, so the Nibelungen shows a very strong mix of pre-Christian, German, and Norse, and then Christian, German attitudes and events. Hi, Alexander. Glad you can join us. So, this mix is just pretty straightforwardly reflected in this exact thing. We have all these pre-Christian names and references being pulled, and yet they're using them in this chivalric, courtly, and implicitly, it's not actually Christian, but it's definitely the Church of Naga. Looks a fair bit like Christianity, with its saints and with everything else going on. Wow! Sigurd! Jesus, dude. So, by mixing these two, it achieves a very specific flavor of epic, and one that is actually really, really effective. So, and Kanga is emulating that. He's trying to make that a playable version, and he's concerned with a lot of the same things something like the Nibelungen Lead is concerned with. As I mentioned, this one really cares a lot about the limits of chivalry. And what happens when loyalty is given to people who do not deserve it. Sigurd is kind of your perfect knight, just like Siegfried is in many ways the perfect knight. Once he has sworn loyalty, he follows it to the end, and goes. He's incredibly dangerous on the battlefield, but also incredibly honorable, and you have to kill him by dishonorable means. Partially because he's basically indestructible because he bathed in Fafnir's blood in the Nibelungen Lead, and like Achilles in the River Styx, it makes him functionally invincible. So, when we're seeing that, Siegfried becomes kind of a pawn for Hagen and for what some of these other unscrupulous courtiers and jealous courtiers can do. This Sigurd in the game is used exactly the same way. He ends up being a destructive force everywhere he goes, despite himself being incredibly well-intentioned and incredibly honorable. We'll see that most clearly in Augustria, when he has to face off against his other best friend, Eldigan. But his nobility ends up making him a pawn, and Eldigan is in the same boat. His focus to his oaths of fealty to a king who does not deserve that fealty ends up, well, getting him killed. And so this game's really concerned with the limits of that and how good intentions can still cause bad ends. It's something that that medieval epic was concerned with. It's something that this Kaga is concerned with, and it's really gratifying to see that happen in this game. Sigurd is giving up on a hard time. Aw. They are sweethearts. And I'm not sure I would go so far as to say it's what early modern Christianity looks like, Alexander. That's a good thought, and would need to think about that more before I can really say either way. but I definitely have an impression that they are really much more keenly aware of the Christian tradition as it is than specifically with the Church of Naga than with syncretic early Norse tradition. Part of the reason for that is that if we go in here and check out the Holy Bloods again, we can see that there's the Naga Holy Blood on the side there. The wielder of that Naga as the leader of the Divine Dragons in actually the Arcanea Saga, this is in the same world as FE1, 2, and 3, Naga is the leader of the Divine Dragons and comes down and gives that power. Each of the dragons gives it to a different Crusader. That language is something we need to talk about, and I have some notes on, but the Crusader that gets the Book of Naga, Saint Haim, Sharding of Heimdallr, is specifically referred to as a saint, and the Church of Edda very much is looking at saints with priests and bishops, following a very sophisticated Christian hierarchy. There definitely is still reference with the pseudo-polytheistic, obviously. In here, it's super polytheistic, and with all the Norse references in the other Divine Dragons and in the Dark Dragon Loft here. But I think Kaga is mostly drawing on later Christian traditions for this part of it, with a healthy dose of the usual thing in fantasy, where it's all this Christian energy crops up in a place that is very much polytheistic. Which is always an odd thing, and something that I'm not so confident on. But yeah, we'll need to think more about that, and I will, and I think next stream we'll be doing more of this game, so I will get back to you on that, to look at what Nordic Christianity appeared as in the first century of conversion, and then we'll go from there. Azell needs to get healed up. Since he got all that money, we'll let him do that. And Lex gets a kill. This should pretty much give him a, 40-something XP off of a single kill. Paragon is such a good skill. And Baldur here is still a god of light and a swordsman. So yeah, as I mentioned, the Tyrfing is a cursed sword in Norse myth, but it does kind of lead into discussing another theme of this game, and another place where Kaga is very aware of. Hey, cool, we got an Accost proc. I like that. Another theme of this game is that of inheritance. And so this is something that is very much very much worried about with the inheritance of the divine weapons over the past century. To often dishonorable people like Longbolt, whose name is himself a reference I should mention. Longbolt is a version of Longobard, a Germanic tribe that's held in northern Italy. But with dishonorable people having these incredibly powerful weapons, issues of genealogy and of inheritance are incredibly important to this game. Also with this game structure, with the two halves playing as two different generations. So yeah, this concern with inheritance is reflected in the source point for the Tyrfing, Hervarar Saga. The main character that it follows is Herver, one of the only like female heroes of the Norse corpus. That's just not really a common thing. As much as we like the idea of the Valkyrie, our Norse corpus does not super well regard female heroes, and has really complicated gender politics going on within the game in order, or within the saga surrounding that inheritance. So, in order to claim the Tyrfing from her father, who at this point was a berserker who died and was buried with the Tyrfing and became undead to protect it because he knew it was bad news. Wow, Sigurd, you gotta work with me, man. Of course, Alexander, that's a good point. I'll get to that in just a moment, once I finish talking about the Tyrfing. Claiming the Tyrfing from her undead father requires Herver to disguise as a man and then go into the burial mound of her father, and in order to, well, discuss and basically enter a long poetic debate with him as to why she deserves the Tyrfing. And he prophesies her doom in this act of claiming, because he knows full well that this is going to go very badly for her. However, Hever insists and ends up being the cause of a lot of death because of it. Her insistence and excessive eagerness to care to claim this weapon that she sees as her birthright ends up causing generations of conflict. So, a case where her personal insistence ends up doing a lot of harm. This is pretty clearly a reference or a similar concern as the themes of this game, and is, I think, I can safely say it's further evidence for how Kaga is intentionally manipulating the source material he works with. I don't have a copy of Hervarar Saga on me, but oh cool, we can see right away. This is good. So otherwise I would talk about it a little more, but I think that's enough to at least show that the same concerns are going on. A few people did that, Antonio. I believe in Hirosaga Kraka someone does that. It's where he ends up kicking up the shield into someone's teeth. And Alexander, I mean, Ulf Helpnar is definitely a tested word, but I believe in Hervarar Saga, he's specifically referred to as Berserker instead of Ulf Helpnar. These are speculated to be two actual, like, social classes, essentially. It's not the thing you see in Englinga Saga, where they are these warriors of Odin that howl and gnash their teeth and go into this huge rage, possibly under the influence of various ritualistic frenzies. This is not what most of our sources for Berserks look like. They seem to be pretty cogent and have a significant overlap with the category of champions. Kappa, or was it Kepir? Yeah, Kapur or Kepir. Meanwhile, we have a new unit. The deer did not die when Gandalf crit him in the face, which is good. And so we have a very mediocre archer. He is very mediocre, but he has pursuit and a cost, which means he can attack a lot of times in a row if you're lucky. And if he's not getting attacked back, then it's actually pretty good news for him. He just does not do a whole lot of damage. So that's not so helpful. We're actually going to have Noise back up a little bit, because... Whoop. We're going to have Noise back up a little bit, so that he can not get attacked by all the guys who are about to spawn. Anyway, Alexander, you mentioned a very good point there. That's a Japanese game, and they never had a notion of a singular overarching god, and so they're much more familiar with these concepts when mixing up the Christian hierarchy. This is a very good point, however, it's not something that only Japanese fantasy does. Dungeons & Dragons, even as early as 1980, in the expansions to 1st edition, and certainly in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, have an explicitly polytheistic canon, despite being purely Western. Okay, now we have Arvis. This name is actually also a Norse reference. While it doesn't really sound like it, Arvis... Arvis is a Japanese corruption. I do mean that not really in a bad way. It's an RL confusion of the Norse name Alvis. Alvis is the name of an elf, or possibly dwarf, it's not clear, in the Poetic Edda. In the Poetic Edda, Alvis goes to Thor to ask for the hand of Thor's daughter Thrudr in marriage. Thor is not a huge fan of this idea, and so he asks Alvis a whole bunch of cosmographic questions on the origins of various bodies and creatures within the world. He answers all of those correctly, but is tricked into staying out too long, and so the sun comes up and he turns to stone. This probably seems like a strange comparison to draw to this prince figure, the Duke of Velthomer. However, this is, I think, actually a case of understanding that character arc extremely well. Alvis is ultimately a well-intentioned, fairly honorable figure that gets caught up in things even bigger than himself, though he's obviously not all that small fry, and ends up meeting a bad end because of it. Because he is too focused on what he wants, he doesn't pay attention to what is happening around him. This is really closely paralleling what is going to happen with Arvis and the Church of Loftyr. In the meantime, we have an actual legendary weapon here. and we can see just how insane legendary weapons are in this game. So not only are Arvis's stats utterly busted, with 6 authority stars, Adept and Nihil, and huge stats, 30 speed, 30 magic, he gets 10 speed, or 10 magic, 10 defense, and 10 resistance from the Volfire. This screws the game's balance to hell and high water. Like, there is no world in which this is balanced. He is just going for it, and is really, really terrifyingly strong because of this weapon. This is, I think, another case where the thematic concerns of the game come before issues of balance. Kaga doesn't really care about creating a balanced game. None of his games are well balanced. However, I made a note here on the issues of the let's see if I can't find it. On the divine weapons, they are in folklore. Things like the Tierfing, like the Balmung, like any of these, the Gebolg, or however else, any of these other weapons. They are often require hidden training and or birthright in order to effectively use. But in return, you get weapons that are incredibly good. In Volsunga Saga, Sigmunder's sword, Grammar, was given to him by Odin, and because he had that sword, he was so strong that it took Odin himself coming and breaking it in order for it to happen. And when Sigurdur reforges Grammar, he becomes no less powerful. I mean, the sword itself is huge. Like, if you convert the measurements given in Volsunga Saga, it actually ends up being about a 5.5 foot long weapon that he uses one-handed. So, it's a huge weapon. Ow. Oh, yeah. Yep, the hardware limitations of genealogy are something Kaga complained about, actually, because he does not like how broken these games, or issues of overflow and all of that going on. He actually was really frustrated with that and felt that he could not make the game quite the way he wanted to. Hey, look at who... Remember, these two are brothers. Apparently they have nothing to say. Now, Sigurd is almost dead, so we're gonna bring in Ethlin with some heals, and then we're gonna get the best weapon in the game. But anyway, yeah, I like how busted these weapons are, because the traditions he's drawing up from have a whole bunch of incredibly busted weapons. The Gebolg is another one. It's thought... the sources conflict a little bit, but one source says that it is a lance that, when it enters someone's body, splits into 7 parts to completely eviscerate them. And that's what happens to Ferdiad in the Ulster cycle. And in the cattle raid. So this guy is injured, so let's see if Medivh can actually kill him. He's at least gonna do some chip. Cool. He actually gets a kill. Medivh is good, guys. Medivh is so bad. But we can give him the Brave Bow later, and that will mean he can attack like 8 times in a turn. So even that will make him somewhat reliable at getting kills. I don't know that for sure, Antonio. I'm not super familiar with our sourcing for the Rus or any accounts of what they used. I think we'll do this and then back off. That'll just be chip damage, and Noise can get the kill. Alec is going to be fine. So, he needs to run away next to Ethlin. See, my whole team's starting to run a little bit low, but we're doing okay with these, taking out these units. I probably should have used the Javelin here instead of this. Oh well. There's a lot of people getting hurt here, but we're just going to stabilize in the next turn or two, so it's not going to be a big deal. But, yeah. Thematic concerns trump balance, which is just fun. Alec got magic. What the hell is going on here? He's got like a 15% growth in that. It's completely useless. But yeah. And Velv, I totally agree. This is another case where he's trying to do this long narrative tradition in a game. Like, that's kind of my interpretation of what Kaga was trying to do. And I mean, I think he did it super well. He's trying to make this game play and feel like each chapter is this long-form oral epic, or semi-oral epic, in the medieval tradition, which he is very keenly aware of. And so he makes these hugely long castle-to-castle narrative missions that take place over entire countries that really match these big narrative conflicts, so that each chapter is its self-contained conflict, except this prologue here, which ties into the conflict of Chapter 1. And I think he does it super successfully. Like, it's honestly kind of remarkable, and I love this game for it. Now, let's see if I have to reset this turn, because if I get unlucky here, like that, Noish now needs to dodge 3 attacks. Oh, okay, or they can go for Quan instead. Odd. The AI here is not exactly clever. These guys should only have like 10 HP, or 10 hits. We're probably fine. Nice crit. But yeah. Each of these, like, are supposed to be a multi-thousand long line, event. To tell. And so, it has these huge sweeps across the map in really generally interesting ways. Okay, we survived that turn, which means I'm going to save, because I didn't think we would. Hey guys, Arden almost made it. Now that we've killed everybody. We're actually going to heal Lex, because Noish isn't going to do anything, so we don't care. Yeah. So, I think another reason, to go back to an earlier point, Alexander, on your polytheistic, it is, and I continue to say it, it's a really insightful point, and there is definitely something more there than what I had commented on, so thank you for that. Another thing that I want to draw attention to with this, though, is how this game actually, for all of the praise I've been giving it, and well-deserved praise I've been giving it, there is one place where this game does things really problematically, and that is in calling the heroes of old crusaders. By having these crusaders, Baldur, Ced, Haim, Njörn, Hezul, Odo, Darwin, Ulir, Bragi, Thruth, and Fjalar. By making these crusaders, we end up falling into some really problematic stereotypes that, to some extent, were present in the Middle Ages, but really reinforce problematic and Eurocentric ideas of the Christian Church and of the purpose of the Crusades. Oh yeah, also, something I didn't mention here. You can see there's that black dot in the center of Arvis's Grate on the Holy Blood. That is Loftier Holy Blood. Definitely not going to be an issue, we promise. But yeah, in the game, these Crusaders are people who made blood pacts with divine dragons. And so they did this specifically to overcome the evil Lothlorien Empire, which killed several 100,000 people over a period of like 100 years. This is, in universe, reasonable, and I'm not going to say stopping the people who are doing child hunts is bad. Like, clearly these Crusaders are fairly noble and people. However, that inevitably draws reference to the historical Crusades, and that's not really a reference that it looks good on them in hindsight. The historical Crusades are a period from 1095 to about 1300 for the Crusades in the Levant. There are things that are awfully Crusade-like elsewhere, but that's kind of our canonical Crusades. And so these were the traditional narrative, as presented by Bernard of Clairvaux, is that this is the First Crusade started when the Byzantine Empire... I should stop running away from Arvis. This is stupid of me. Anyway, the First Crusade started when the Byzantine Emperor sent a request to Pope Urban II for aid against the Seljuk Turks. Pope Urban agreed and summoned a whole bunch of people to southern France to give this rousing speech on how we must go protect our Christendom against the enemies in the Holy Land. This rapidly turned into a call to retake Jerusalem from supposed infidels or unfaithful ones. So, Arvis, you could move your full move. You know that, right? Anyway. Well, lots of people went, and it, of course, was successful. They did retake large parts of the Levant, or not retake, just take large parts of the Levant and turn that into the Kingdom of Jerusalem. However, there is a lot of myths that have been established in the Middle Ages and since the Middle Ages about the Crusades. I've got a few of them here, but obviously there's a very diverse set of reasons as to why someone... But you've got a really good level, holy shit. I've got some of the reasons done here, and I should put out a disclaimer. I am not a historian of the Crusades. I am not even particularly interested in the Crusades. However, it's just frankly not possible or realistic to talk about the Middle Ages in video games and in modern understandings without them. So we are going to deal with it and talk about them anyway. So, there's a lot of reasons why Frankish knights went on crusade to begin with. I'm mostly drawing things from Ask Historians Flare user Welf on a Shelf, who has done a lot of very good research and public outreach on the subject, so I highly recommend you go to reddit.com/askhistorians and look at the things he says. He says them both more gracefully and more usefully than I do. But some of the reasons he drew was personal gain, or actual religious fervor, and personal or family tradition. Some people went on the later crusades because their parents or grandparents went on the earlier crusades. So this is very much, I think, ties into themes of genealogy again, but is not such a big deal. However, in the Middle Ages, conceptions of the Crusades were not that they were straightforwardly good. There are some people in the Middle Ages who thought that the reasons why they went on crusade was just pure avarice. That these people were interested in just accumulating personal wealth at all costs and are not at all doing it for noble purposes or noble ends. And a good example of this occurs in our Norse sources, specifically the tale of King Sigurd the Jorsalafari, or Jerusalem Farer. He went on crusade, leaving his brother Eyvindur to deal with ruling Norway. When he returned, they actually got into a big poetic argument as to which was better. Whether it was better to go off and try and redeem people's souls through religious reasons on crusade, or if that is rejecting your duties to your subjects to care for them in this life. And so there's a lot of controversy. There are some French sources that also really think that the Crusaders are just a bunch of bastards that were going to try and claim wealth through murdering of innocent people. So it's complicated. Now, kind of the classic example of a crusader is Richard the Lionheart, Richard II of England. So, came and was kind of the main driving force for the Third Crusade, because Philip Augustus left fairly shortly, and Frederick Barbarossa died on the way there. So he was the main force of the Third Crusade, and has been very much glorified in English consciousness, and I think Anglo-American consciousness since then. Certainly compared to his brother King John, did really has some better than that, because he didn't lose all of the French territory England had. But he was gone for most of his reign, away from England in some pretty trying times. And so there were definitely commentaries, people who were very anti-Richard in the Middle Ages, because they thought he was too busy running off for glory. And he was not popular with his contemporaries and colleagues on the Crusade, because he actually got held hostage for 7 years on the way home, because he insulted the Duke of Saxony, who was the leader of the Holy Roman Empire forces after Barbarossa died. So, yeah, there's definitely the sense that the historical crusades are not straightforwardly good, and they were violent. They were incredibly violent. In the first crusade, the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem, the rebuilt one, this is definitely not the original one. Uh, Sources describe it as being ankle deep in blood by the time the massacre there ends. Most of those deaths were civilian, not soldiers. So they, at the end of the First Crusade, they caused a lot of harm in their name of going against what they conceived of as this monolithic evil or enemy religion for some of them, because most of the Frankish forces uh, did not have understanding of Islam beyond very vague terms. The Byzantines did, though, and the Byzantine emperor actually cut off all the aid to the First Crusade after they invaded Fatimid territory, because he wanted them to go help against the Seljuks. The Fatimids were also really worried about the Seljuks, and they had an alliance going on. The Frankish Crusaders completely trampled over that, creating this conception of Islam as this monolithic entity instead of a series of fragmented competing states, just like Europe was. So, however, unfortunately, this image of the object to go against in the Crusades, of this monolithic opposing religion and opposing political power, still survives and still is incredibly popular. No, Arvis is gonna just bail, but he gave us a silver sword, which is probably the best weapon in this game. Not because it's got the best stats, though it does have good stats, but because this silver sword, I mean, obviously, 3 might, 14 weight is, or sorry, 3 weight, 14 might is huge. He one-rounds literally everything with that. But, this is probably the first weapon, and in many runs, the only weapon you get above 50 kills, and so the only thing that will have innate crit. So it is, in some ways, even better than the divine weapons, because it's going to have such huge amounts of utility for a really, really long time. Now, we're almost done with this chapter, and then I think that's actually what we're going to call the stream, because I do need to eat, and yeah. But we are going to finish this chapter, see the ending of it, and then we'll do chapter 1 next time. Or try to. Chapter 1's long, but there's plenty going on there. I will not be streaming tomorrow, but I will be streaming probably earlier next week. This is a good time to do the shoutouts. Follow me on Twitter at LudoHistory. In order to, I'll certainly let you know the day, a few hours beforehand at the latest, when streams are going to happen. So that's the best way to do it. I'll also make an announcement in the Discord server for Overly Sarcastic Productions, since they are huge friends of the channel and did a lot to help get it all set up. But yeah, to continue to talk about the Crusades, another thing the term Crusade implies, this game falls into it a lot less, but still does show a variant of the trope, is that the variant, really? Mr. 92, okay. The variant of the trope that... I think I'm going to do this. That this game shows is that the Crusaders defeated this evil entity that came from far away, that is basically almost extra-dimensional, and they go forth, and their descendants are in charge of making sure that, in this case, Loftyr never reemerges. This trope shows up a lot. A good example of it is in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where the Crusaders found the Grail, found this immensely powerful thing, and then were become responsible for making sure that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands, and they become protectors of it. The Netflix show Grimm does the same thing, where they crusade the kind of main baddies are these extra-dimensional entities that were found in Constantinople by people on the Fourth Crusade, and then their descendants are trying to deal with the resurrection of those. This is a Western European problem, in that it is very much talking about the horror and fascination of places to the east. There's a poem from High Medieval France about Charlemagne going to the going to Constantinople and meeting the Byzantine Emperor, and he and his knights seem very boorish. They're very crude, and they're completely overawed by the automata that the Byzantine Emperor has. They're completely outclassed and have no idea how to understand what's going on, and get made fun of for it. However, this ends up backfiring because Charlemagne gets asked to do something impossible. And he's going to fail, and then he prays to God for aid, and God helps him, does him a solid, lets him finish the thing. Oh, he did not double. Really? Oh dear. How? Oh, 0 speed. -2 speed. Okay, yep. That's awkward. Whatever, another kill from Medea then. So God helps him out, and the Byzantine Emperor ends up being overawed, and his tower gets shaken and nearly cast down by God, and God ends up asking him to, or Charlemagne ends up receiving tribute from this, from the Byzantine Emperor. Obviously, this kind of thing never happened, but it does kind of demonstrate the fascination and fear of weird, hidden, problematic knowledge found in the Byzantine Empire and the Dar al-Islam that persists, that fear persists in Western European and American contexts all the way into the present in that trope. And so this is largely the case, all this Crusader language and the problems that entails, I think really is a case where part of this may be the Project Naga translation team, but it's also a case where there's some genuinely problematic uses of the Middle Ages. I don't think that this is intentional, but it is disappointing to see how Kaga, who is in so many other ways so critical of his sources and so careful with how he's manipulating them. It's a bit sad to see them used uncritically as a, yeah, and ends up falling into a variation of a really problematic trope that ends up enforcing Western European supremacy ideas. But we are almost done with this map. We're just actually going to spend a couple turns here healing people to try and get Ethlin a level, while Sigurd goes forth and tries to not lose against this guy. Jonard is bulky and hits really hard. Axes have terrible hit, but they hit so hard. But -2 speed, he's going to get doubled, and the silver sword does not hit much less hard. So this should be pretty easy. Arden almost made it to this to actually, play the game. But that's fine. Alright. He told us to go to hell, but that was just mean of him. We're also going to try and get some levels on some other people. Like, if Finn can tank a hit, he's at 95 experience, so we're going to see if we can't get him a kill. 52 hit. This is risky. But he doesn't die, so not really a problem. He got the hit, so he gets the level, and I'm happy. Let's see if Finn gets decent levels this time. Ah, defense. Ah, and he got resistance. Just a handy thing, but not something that anyone in this game has. If I heal... He cheats. He swaps to his hand axe instantly, so he cheats. Let's see. 24/7. Attack speed is... Speed 10, weight 8, so speed is 2. Speed on the hand axe is -4. So Medivh can actually eat this hit, I believe. 24 minus 7 is 16. No, 17. So, yeah. He can eat this hit, and... My guys have good luck. Cool. Another level there. And yeah, we are about to call it quits here. Greetings. Hi, Jack. I'm glad you could join us. I will warn you, though, we are about to end. I need to kill one more guy, and then I am ending the stream for the day. I'm alright. Getting to stream again is nice. I've been out of the country, so I missed my usual streaming time on Wednesday. So getting to do this again is nice, and a nice little break. Anyway, let's see, is there anyone else we can get levels? Not really, so we're going to see if Lex can manage this. No, this is my third playthrough of this game. Overall. If Alec hits, that would be enough. But yeah, I don't like doing blind playthroughs on this channel, although I will probably do some, because talking about history and myth in these games works a lot better if I can do the reading ahead of time to figure out what's going on. Dang. I love this lore, and there are so many references to so many myths, and they're done tastefully. Done really tastefully, which I like. It's... Okay. So this is going to be a little more difficult because no one can tank. Yep, there is. I've been talking about some of it. You may want to catch the VOD afterwards. I've been talking about some, though not nearly all, that appear within this prologue in character names, place names, and some of the divine weapons and the ways that those all interact. So you may want to catch the VOD to see what is going on there. Because I love how that's done so tastefully. Okay, so Medea can still go in here, take this, okay. He still doesn't die, which gives... hopefully gets us close enough that Lex can do something, and if not, nope. Unlucky. Okay, so this does not kill by one, which is annoying. But these guys heal so much, I don't really have a choice, unless if Kuin doesn't lose. Nope, that's not gonna hit. Azel will die, but he'll probably get the kill. Azel would get the kill, but if he misses, he's dead. So that sucks. Still, we'll do this, and... try and get Lex some more XP. Nope. Lex is unlucky today. Not that Lex is ever lucky, but... we'll just end up giving the kill to Sigurd then. That's true. I could put him here, and then Azel has a much higher hit chance. Just means I can't seize this turn. 82 hit? I'll take that. Worst case scenario, we'll have to load the previous turn save, or the start of this turn as a save. But magic's good, so... we kill this guy, we free a castle. It's a very Arthurian thing, actually. A lot of Arthurian myths have a variation of go free the castle. Yeah, I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time, because there's not a whole lot... I'm not caring about rank, and Ethlin... I mean, if we're honest, Ethlin doesn't super need healing, but I will take a couple turns. Or... I should say, Ethlin doesn't super need experience, because I can always return spam in a little while to do that. Money's not a problem, since she can just take all of Quan's money. But I will probably take a couple turns to get her some experience. Mostly, I don't want to be playing too slow. Yeah. Kind of my goal for playthrough is I'm not caring about rank, although I am definitely going for no deaths. But I'm also focused on trying to keep the pace of things moving so we keep having new things to talk about. Because watching watching me sit there and spam healing is not super helpful. And no, I have not picked out any pairings yet. I'll probably go Aeralex, though that's not always super great. Paragon Larsa is nice. Anyway, Leander, I will try and help. In 890 AD, there was no universities at all, much less ones trying to look at specifically technology. The first university is founded in, I believe it's like 912 in Fez, Morocco. And the first European university is founded in 1050 in Bologna, Italy. So in 890 there are no universities. However, you are correct that developing new technology is not really the point of an early university. A lot of it is commentary on classical texts, and a lot of it is on focus of the commentary tradition, philosophy. There is some technology in that the quadrivium is music, arithmetic, geometry, and what's the fourth one? I don't remember. Let me look that up quick, because that's actually important. Because university education focused on 4 subjects. We do arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. And so people affiliated with universities did end up working on some technological stuff, automata, and other such high-thought understandings of the natural world. In terms of technology, of like, is a university developing new types of plows, new types of machinery? No. That's not the purpose of medieval university. That's not something anyone in the Middle Ages would conceive of. And Zasamba, I do. Haakon the Fourth, Haakon Hakonarson, is definitely my favorite Scandinavian monarch, because he was the one who finally he first was the one who made Iceland stop this stupid attempt at, of Norway. The stop its attempt at being a free state that was completely reliant on Norway. I'm actually a fan of the way he acted during that, but also he was huge patron of the arts, and so a lot of our medieval romances, and that got translated into Old Norse because of Haakon IV's interest. He tried to make Norway a proper European powerhouse, and that involved bringing in a bunch of French culture, and so like Ivan Saga, Percival Saga, Motel Saga, and there's a translation of Marie de France that into Old Norse commissioned during the reign of Haakon IV. So he did a huge translation work, and a lot of the literature that I am interested in studying shows influence from that particular decision, or are themselves translation projects from him. So yeah, that is he's definitely like my favorite guy. Cool, so that only took me 19 turns, but it did take me 2 hours. So we're going to go through the beginnings of this. Chapter 1 follows from the prologue. We're going to try and take on Verdane and try and rescue Ideen. Of course. There is so much that. So, Grand Vale reviews Verdane as a barbarian. They do a lot of raiding. Yeah, the next stream is going to be sometime next week. I don't know the exact date. Some of this kind of depends on what my schedule is and when the internet is free. I am not at home. As I mentioned, I'm on vacation right now, so I am on a different setup than normal. So, and the internet is a lot less stable. So it's kind of when I have time and when I have internet access, I'll let you know. It's probably going to be sometime Wednesday to Friday. Again, follow me on Twitter at Ludo History in order to be notified, and I will try and let people know through the OSP Discord server, since the admins all decided that that was an okay thing to do. So, we are getting the overview here of Batur and Verdane. However, I believe that this is, we've already gotten the save for Chapter 1, so we'll go through this all the next stream in order to take a look at this again in a little more depth. So yeah, I hope you all have enjoyed the stream, and I will see you all next time with more Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War. Bye bye!